Describe how it is, like,
Yeah.
a tall, glittering tree with an angel on top. Like, make it sound sacred instead of saying it's sacred.
Well, yeah, like it turns out because we have this angel that is like really like gaudy looking, and it's like almost disgusting. So like we switched the angel for a star that's like really like contemporary and like well looking. So then I'm really pretty.
Perfect.
Okay. Do you need like the instructions? So like after this, should I go into like the more research and then end it?
Yeah, I mean, try to like integrate some anecdotes into the research.
Yeah, they'll do that.
Yeah, but like talk about the first Christmas trees. I remember hearing something like some guy like went
The writer to have some type of hallmarky kind of finish and say, and that's when I learned. And in other words, you have the temptation to kind of bluntly state what insight you got, and I tend to find that fairly ineffectual. So I would suggest instead that it should be something that's implied rather than directly stated, that it's more effective if the telling and the observations that you have in the telling make clear what it is insight that you've gleaned. Otherwise, everything else applies. Remember, we're looking for good intros. Give feedback on the intros. Do they hook the reader in or not? Of course, GPS. And this is going to be based on a narrative of some kind, either a specific narrative or a collection of narratives. Excuse me. So you're looking for location, dealing with, or telling details. You want to get a sense of this person. Remember the pieces that we read yesterday, who took different approaches. One was episodic, one was kind of a narrative, one was impressionistic, but there's sort of a focal idea that is carrying through. So in your reading, does everything add up to a portrayal of this person, or again, it's a series of unrelated facts? And the emphasis again is on specificity. Do you have anecdotes? It's more or less, and I'm repeating myself, but more or less what we've been talking about all semester. If you, as the writer, step in, you are no longer letting the reader participate. You are telling the reader what to think, or what to believe, or what to feel. If you can show the reader, if you can give the reader the setting and the behavior so clear and distinct that the reader participates in it, then you have enabled the reader to become a part of the experience. But if you simply
Let's begin the
tell the
discussion.
reader
So again,
what
the
the
emphasis
experience
in
meant
this
to
is
you
not
was,
on
then
you,
all you
although
have
again
is
you're going to have your own
information.
interaction with this
Not
person,
have
but
participation.
the reader should, by the time he or she finishes reading your piece, have a fairly clear idea about this person, have a sense of their personality. This, like the location, is tricky in that it can lend itself to just a list. This person did this, did this, did this, did this. You want to have some type of coherent personality
Instead
that
of thinking
emerges
about the
from
lesson
this, so that
first
it
and
does
then
have
going
some
back
structure.
and trying to find the incident that gave you that lesson, it's better to think in your past, what are moments or events in your life that had meaning to you, even if you haven't necessarily figured that out, but for some reason they still ring with you. And I think if you isolate those moments and start asking questions about, well, why have I recalled that? Why is that so intense for me? I think you will start to transcend that and understand why it was important. So in typical inductive fashion, I wouldn't worry about the idea first and then go find the incident. I find the incident that just for whatever reason, if you think about moments that were important, then they could have been traumatic, they could have been incredibly funny, but in some way you still recall these, they just stand out. And I would argue the reason they stand out is because they meant
It's
something.
more about
And if
working
you tell
this
it well.
world. And yet it kept coming back to the trunks, which is like sort of the grounding type
like
thing.
the golden thread.
Yeah, it's like his link back to America.
Yes.
And he's in this foreign place and he's doing this work with all these native people. But and Jacqueline, the French lady. But it's just like, it's something very different, not something that we normally think about, but it's like, but at the same time it has collecting the trinkets, which is something that you do when you go on vacation or you go to another place, you collect things from there and you bring them home. So it's like the link between the two. I thought it was really interesting the way they contrasted with each other.
I love the way you talk about the trunk, because I think that's exactly right, that the trunk becomes kind of this, again, golden thread, but connecting metaphor all the way through. And as you say, there's almost a sense of this grounding
that the way this ends, I don't know if anybody else had that response to that ending. I said I moved out of the home for the dying destitute back into the seething chaos on the street.
Even though it's not like telling a narrative, it's still sort of chronological, and it's all. She says so little about his actual personality that everything she says sort of reveals more about him. It's not just like, this is who he is and I'm going to tell you a story about him. It's sort of like unraveling it through the whole thing, so you continue on to find more about him.
This is a fascinating structure to me because it's what we call episodic, where it's just like a series of things put together, which would tempt us to get toward a
get a really
list.
good idea of what he
But
was
somehow,
like.
as you say,
Like we
there's a
get
chronological-
descriptions of like something that he would use or something that he had, and then her memories of that thing, but never really specifically about her grandpa. I mean, in some places, like his hands shook as he brought his food to his mouth.
Yeah. He says things almost like he's looking at it from a child's perspective. I don't know if that makes sense, but one of the best things was when he was talking about the guy with 2 fingertips on one of his fingers, and he was saying the thing I remember most about him were his eyelashes. He had the longest eyelashes I've ever seen.
Or when he finishes the hand and he says, the nails look beautiful, all 11 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the guy's a superb writer. We'll talk about
So I'm currently viewing both my grandma and my grandpa. They're very interesting. They're not crazy per se. They're just very weird.
Up until, a few years ago, she was still, walking around and playing music. And she acted like a 20-year-old in a 90-something-year-old's body. Her favorite phrase is, "Oh, to be 80 again."
And he wears extremely bright clothes made by his wife, Rebecca. So basically, he wears like this, like a fabric of a very deep turquoise and bright pink, and maybe some orange, like all mixed together, and then with pop collar.
For someone who's an ex-terrorist, he seems awfully awesome.
His dad was.
His dad was.
He was.
I'm sorry, Dad was a
And so he looks somewhat ridiculous. And then whenever he has students over to his house, he cross-dresses as Davina. So a woman with size 16 bright orange heels. And he wears a bright orange dress and a bright orange wig. And then he's very hirsute, so he looks kind of bizarre with the chest hair underneath his dress.
She always leaves salt out of everything. She's really, really afraid of salt. And if my brother picks up a little thing of salt to put a little bit on, I don't know, whatever, she'll go into a frenzy and be like, "Oh child, oh no, what are you doing with that stuff? Oh no, you can't do that. Oh my gosh, I can't watch this. And she'll just go crazy.
He has a mortal fear of salt.
Yeah, very, very, very salt.
Good. Well, it sounds like you get a lot of good stories like that. I love what you just did, just imitating her voice. I mean, that would be great to get that, that kind of quote or something about the way that she talks to everybody. Thank you. Ruben, what do you got?
So the kind of craziness was more kind of an eccentricity. It wasn't something that drove you nuts.
No, it was. It definitely was. And I can't think of specific examples right now, but I'm going to. Like when she was younger, she and her husband, they fought a lot, but they loved each other. But she was an alcoholic, and she chased him around their house with a frying pan once, and then out the door. And apparently my dad was telling the story, and apparently it was a regular occurrence, and so all the neighbors came out and watched. And 8 houses down, there was somebody who couldn't quite see, and so their daughter was running back and forth, relaying information about how my grandma was chasing her husband around with a frying pan, screaming at him it was "You pious son of a bitch." She was screaming it at him, and it was great.
What did she cook for you?
Lasagna. She did a lot of lasagna, and
Would she make treats?
She did. She made these fig bars, which didn't sound very good, but they were so delicious.
Yeah.
And she would make these little things that she called them carmelitas, and they were chocolate and caramel, and then not granola, but really sweet, crunchy stuff, graham cracker stuff, and then another layer of caramel.
So I was thinking about writing about my experiences in an African city, and specifically getting mobbed by street vendors.
It's always fun.
Because in some ways, you know, I just have to keep walking and push them away.
Mm-hmm.
And while I know that some of them are probably lying when they say, "Sir, I really need you to buy this so I can feed my family," you know, they need the money. I don't need the money anywhere near as much as they do.
So, were you conflicted in?
Yeah, I still haven't really decided what to do there. Like, you know, part of me says I should just buy everything they have because it wouldn't cost that much money for me and it would mean a huge amount for them. But, I mean, I know they're lying to me.
Or at least some perhaps are.
Yeah.
So, why, obviously, I think it's a great example of what we're talking about here. Why did you find that, even now, kind of a memorable experience? Why did that make an impact on you?
Well, because first of all, it was pretty heart-wrenching. I mean, you have children who obviously have untreated HIV, who are, you know, I tried to buy from people like that who are, you know, running around you in circles and holding out trinkets and, you know, pieces of cloth, and that you know they may have made themselves. They're trying to sell to you. But then, you know, you also have guys who are sitting there drinking, you know, they have a bottle of Coca-Cola, and they're also mobbing you, selling trinkets from big Indian companies that are trying to, that hire people in the villages. But, I mean, even though it's still, you know, it's giving them employment, something that they might not have otherwise. It's just very difficult to decide what to do.
A barnacle-encrusted shell hits the salt water with a satisfying plop. The smell of dead fish fills the air as weathered hands pry apart the day's harvest. Grammy is making chowder. She stands stooped, watching the pot's swirling contents. Every year, the entire family looks forward to Grammy's clam chowder, made from a family recipe devised back in Scotland. It is summer in Cape Cod, her favorite place.
Yeah, I've had to do a lot of digging and cross-referencing to make sure I got all the information straight, but yes, it's true.
Of course, Mattel has managed to offend far more people than just feminists. Political correctness hasn't exactly been the company's strong suit. For example, Colored Francie was released in 1967 as a token to the civil rights movement. All black Barbies produced thereafter used the same body mold as white Barbies, but were simply painted brown, up until the 2009 Sew in Style line. The same problem occurred with the 2005 Chinese New Year doll, which had pale skin, European-shaped eyes, and distinctly light eyebrows. Mattel continued to nail the African-American community when it released the Black Oreo Barbie in 1997. It wasn't until a Nabisco-sponsored Barbie was on the shelves that they realized the negative connotations of the word Oreo. Then there's the Happy Family pregnant Midge doll with a removable fetus inside her magnetic belly. Needless to say, it was discontinued shortly after launch. The latest controversy is the Burqa Barbie, Ola, who was designed to honor Islamic women, apparently by utilizing a symbol of oppression. A leg of lamb, a bar of chocolate, a loaf of bread, a plate of baklava. For a runt, Lulu can sure put it away. A medium cafe-colored labradoodle, Lulu is basically just a big ball of brown fur. When she sprawls on the kitchen floor, I occasionally mistake her for a shag carpet.
Yeah. Isn't
That's
chocolate
good.
bad for dogs now?
Yeah.
Or like this, my dad likes to pick Lulu up in his arms and cradle her like a
That's
baby.
hard to do.
When she refuses to get her dainty feet wet going to the bathroom in the rain,
He holds an umbrella over her as she pees.
Wow.
Did you record this conversation? Or?
No, it's just something that I remember.
You remember the way she talks? This is great. You know, there was this huge, what do you call those things? The ones for trains. Her brows furrow in an effort to find the word. A trellis. There was a great big trellis. She opens her arms wide to demonstrate, then snaps them back together for warmth. Near our house, and we kids would go walking over it, and there was no rail or anything. And one day we went walking, we were right in the middle, and down came this train. And we had no choice. We just hung off the side, and the train went by us shaking and rattling the trellis. When we got back up, you can bet your ass we were scared. By the time we got off, we were just laughing. She shakes her head ruefully, laughing at the memory. We were such stubborn little bastards. It's good. I just want to bring it to your attention. It's a stylistic thing that, for me, is oriented toward putting everything you need in the sentence but nothing more, and that's the use of that as a relative pronoun. Quite often you can drop it, and the sentence retains its meaning. So instead of saying something like, the story that I wanted to read is on the website, you can drop it. The story I wanted to read is on the website. So it's just a little tightening technique, but that's one of the things I'm crossing out. So look through your papers and I can demonstrate. I wanted to sleep. So you want to emphasize that. If you want just separate ideas, I can only think of one. Well, if depending how you phrase it, if you could say, I only want to do one thing when I got home. It almost, in that case, it almost sounds like a colon because your reader is saying, what's the one thing you wanted to do? So the colon it suggests that the second part is completing something from the first part, whereas the semicolon is more two separate things, but just similar related ideas. At any rate, internet, capitalized thus, not internet, e.g. Mercury Lash did not live to see the internet, read internet, or the full digital revolution that the personal computer spawned. At any rate, unless you got me a source later on after class, well, the source I have says it is capitalized. You want me to try the Chicago Manual?
7 years is a long time.
Yeah. You're being awfully.
Or would that be a colon, or should it be in parentheses? I don't know. This could be colon and then put that in parentheses.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can talk and describe how it is, like, you know,
Yeah.
a tall, glittering tree with an angel on top.
It could make it sound
sacred.
I don't know, because,
Well, yeah,
because
like,
social roles that people make have this business roles
angel
that
that like really like gaudy looking. It's like almost disgusting. So like we switched the angel for a star that's like really like contemporary and like proper things with us. Then I'm really
Perfect.
Okay. Do you think like the instructions for like after this should I go into like the more research and then end it?
Yeah, I mean, try to like integrate some of those into the research.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, but like talk about the first person choice. I remember hearing a story where like some guy like went yeah, yeah, saw a tree with like dew on it. It was glitter. Are you gonna do that because that was the most beautiful thing if you wanted to recreate it?
Okay, I'll write that down.
I don't know if that's true. I remember hearing that when I was little.
Jump here.
I thought it was
Why was she at your house, and how did she do that? Because when you first met her, so that entire thing just needs a little more description. And then how did this suddenly happen? Okay. Are we really just
yeah. And then and then
Oh, yeah.
it's both. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, there's like mistakes and stuff, but I'll just, yeah, okay, here, you just might want to like,
This is very good.
so I think that's where you think everybody to research for the most part.
Oh, yeah. It's only for that you could possibly that could be talking to you.
That's true.
Government is a.
Oh, you're right. I used to talk to decisions are the same.
And do you think that's better without that word? Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
and but grading on everyone's nerves.
Yeah.
Can you grade on nerves?
Yeah.
weird, because it's an actual English word.
Anyone you agree?
Anyway, the wood thing again. His little hands trying
Oh.
to here. Would somehow manage, just say
Somehow
My
managed.
mom, the same thing here. My mom would find some clever.
Found.
Yeah.
Should I put some or just no?
David, which
Should I have some or just get rid of
found.
some clever? Cause, okay. Because it like happened every year. Like every year we'd make them.
Yeah. I know what you need for clubs right in the interstate. Yeah, so like that. I just, instead of saying all those who meet Leah know, just go straight in. She's a klutz. You know, it's like you got this long sentence and a short one afterwards. It's nice and punchy, and it gets to the point, which is what that is. Okay.
Yeah, you found.
Exactly. So get rid of those auxiliaries.
Yeah. You know, but I felt like I was just stepping it out too. I mean, do you think that I should take this out and kind of weave it in through an anecdote? I just don't really.
Yeah, I definitely think the anecdote would be more powerful, and I think if you change the focus so it's not so much you envying them, but you observing them,
Right.
and what you see, then that opens it up to more anecdotes.
Right.
Again, like the birthday cake you just gave me is great.
Okay.
So I think that enables you to come up with more examples where you don't have to just find all the good things. Obviously,
Right.
there's some tension there too. So, and maybe the reflective part for you comes out again in looking at the nature of identity. That we have this desire both to feel close to other people, but to define ourselves away from them. And siblings do this all the time. I was sitting alone at a corner table. We had been instructed not to sit next to people we knew, and as a proud weirdo, I really didn't feel like sitting next to any normal people. Nevertheless, a girl sat next to me. She smiled and started chattering about how her name was Presley, and she got her name from Elvis. I learned it was a life dream of hers to have 3 children named Chewbacca, Potassium, and Ketchup. I think potassium sounds real pretty, she explained.
Probably at work.
Hi. You wrote about chicken dinners.
I read about Card County.
Oh, I was close. I was going by your title. Your father apparently is a wanted man.
Sort of. Yeah.
Because he engages in illegal blackjack activity.
Only in Tahoe, but yeah.
Yeah. Do they have his picture or stuff? Or?
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same casinos every year, so it's probably just like, you again, get out. But
Question I wanted to ask you, as you say in the story, you learned this skill. Have you ever yourself utilized this?
not in casinos, or like not anywhere real, but with like my sister's friends and
Well, I
my
guess
dad.
you're too young.
Right.
Do you have plans when you become of age?
Heck yeah.
Science cap, you
Wouldn't
say.
work.
Yeah.
Why?
Because it was pretty miserable, and I tend to find that other people's misery is pretty funny. And looking back on it, I find my own misery a little funny, so...
Wow. So misery loves distance?
Yeah, I guess you could put it that way.
What'd you write about?
Fairy tales.
What a dumb idea. Why'd you write about fairy tales?
Because they're gross.
Yeah, they're gross.
The little ones.
Yeah, the real ones, not the ones that Disney gives you. And you even entitled this Once Upon a Crime. 24 editions of Monopoly. Along with the original, there's Monopoly Deluxe, Monopoly Junior, Monopoly City, Golf Monopoly, Las Vegas Monopoly, Powder Puff Girls Monopoly, Elvis Monopoly, Astronomy Monopoly, Peanuts Monopoly, New York Yankees Monopoly, Utah Monopoly, Justice League of America Monopoly, Corvette Monopoly, Mountaineering Monopoly, NASCAR Monopoly, Simpsons Monopoly, .com Monopoly, Horseopoly, Dogopoly, Bibleopoly, insert any location or popular TV show here Monopoly, and even anti-Monopoly. I won't play a single one. The mindset was probably inherited from my mom, who was not above crossing out whole paragraphs in my favorite bedtime storybooks and revising them in meticulous handwriting. In her vision of Babar, the baby elephant's mother was not shot by hunters, but just napping under the swaying jungle trees. Mom also edited books for sexist content. In the boxcar children's stories I read, Violet and Jesse ventured out into the forest while the boys stayed home and washed the dishes. My mother and I agreed. 3 is too young an age to hear tales of death and destruction. Got to help. The social worker had called at 2:30 that morning and asked if we would do emergency placement foster care for a 5-year-old little girl. She had leukemia. She only had a 40% chance of surviving her chemotherapy. Her mother had nearly destroyed the little girl's life trying to cure her illness by giving her Tylenol every day for over a year. The little girl needed to be placed with a family who could care for medically fragile children. My mom was a nurse. Our family had been doing foster care for 3.5 years then, but never have we been so conflicted about what to do. Natty and I knew right away. We began to make up a bed for the little girl and pick out some of our toys and games to give her. I found an extra toothbrush in her bathroom, a pink one that I set out on the counter just in case she forgot hers in the rush of moving out of her home. MySpace, admit it. You've been there. Perhaps it was just a moment of weakness. You cracked under peer pressure. Maybe you were genuinely interested in social network and you just didn't realize what you were getting into. Or maybe you're a sexual predator. We know who you are. The scary thing about MySpace is we really do know who you are. You're Kim from Texas, whose interests include cooking, country music, and volunteering at the Republican convention. We Googled you. We know that liberal who blogs all sorts of madness is your Uncle Ted. You think your profile is set to private? Keep thinking. I created a totally awesome and non-corrupting Facebook. Now, what'd you like about that?
I love the sarcasm.
Sarcasm? Just sounded like straight commentary to me. Yeah, very controlled. Annika has a very distinct writing style, which I picked up over the years. But like that opening paragraph, the very short declarative sentences, which are very effective, and that creates that kind of tone. Robin?
Like where it's like you suck at the beginning and then you're getting better in the middle and then you're like, you and your dad are just kind of like going and going at the
Let's
end.
talk about that. That was a structural device on your part where you interweave the research with this continual development of your abilities. So how did you come up with that?
Well, in my first draft, I had sort of the same structure of like personal to research, but in all of the personals I was really bad. That's more realistic. But I was reading it and it didn't flow well, and it seemed kind of like I was just making fun of myself. So I changed it a little bit to speed up the learning process.
Well, it's a very common technique and a very effective one that acts in effect as your golden thread. That this is you learning and developing this ability, but you interweave that with background, which just flushes out the narrative. You started out just talking about your cousin, which would have been enough, but the story takes this wonderful twist. And can you talk about that, why you added that? Because it could have, again, been just you and your cousin, but then you bring the thing with your mom in, which just gives it almost like a psychological detail. How did you come up with that?
I don't know, I was just remembering, I look through my books now and I can see like where she wrote in. She edited like all of her books. The Eloise ones, did anyone ever read Eloise? Yes. We bought a new one and it was a new version and everything had been changed in it and she got really mad because she remembered her original one, so she went through and crossed everything out and put it back the way it was. Awesome. I don't know, you're just like, I was looking.
It's just so scary. Your mom edited your fairy tales.
Yeah.
So it comes by genuine.
What she did reminds me of what happens in Mr. Ravioli, where you start off with the whole anecdote about cute little kid, and then just switches to a totally different topic.
Yeah.
And just goes in a funny direction.
That's an excellent observation. Yeah, you kind of start with the anecdote, and then it becomes this kind of commentary on the whole nature of fairy tales. Were you really that surprised when you started researching this?
Yes, oh my god, they're disgusting.
The answer would be yes. Now, I remember years ago when I was first starting to teach mythology, I read the entire collection of Grimm's Tales. And
I thought it was good. I feel like these should be big sentences.
Maybe.
I believe the number
Is this still like
number total
The word non-influence is very good.
8.
Thank you.
What was my comment over here?
Assuming
There were
she's
a couple
dog.
times. Well, yeah. It's only right now that you're possibly not that. It could be talking to you.
That's true.
The government is a.
You're right. I used to talk to decisions that are the same.
And do you think that's better without that word?
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
and like grading on everyone's nerves.
Yeah.
Can you grate on nerves? Can you grate on nerves?
Yeah, great.
If you can grade cheese, you can.
Yeah, trying to think about that. Could you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get on someone's
Yeah,
nerves.
but
Great.
Grade. I know it's how you grade on
You
your
can
nerves.
grade on someone's nerves.
Yeah, you can definitely grade on someone.
Can you grade on? Filming that? I'm insulting a student and you're filming it?
No, I was filming it.
Ben, I haven't read Ben.
Is that all?
Thank you, America. Yes, it's all.